we can now report that, and this has been our policy at Bloomberg all along, that if the Associated Press or two major networks report something as a projection, we will endorse that projection. That is what has happened here. The Associated Press plus NBC and CNN and others now have projected Joe Biden. Pennsylvania was always going to be a pivotal state here. We'll remember that President Trump narrowly won as a surprise the state of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, perhaps I should say, in 2016. It really was critical to him, along with Wisconsin and with Michigan. Wisconsin and Michigan have been projected for some time to go for Vice President Biden. So it appears that Donald Trump lost those fairly early on. But Pennsylvania was key with those 20 electoral votes. There are so many electoral votes. It also may put to rest any question about Arizona, because as we recall, the Associated Press early on election night made a projection in Arizona, and we reported that as Bloomberg. It was a narrow margin. It got narrow over time. The Associated Press would say they're sticking with that projection. It may well still prove to be right. But if Pennsylvania, as everyone is reporting now, has gone for Vice President Biden, it makes it academic, because those 20 votes are enough to take Vice President Biden up to the magic 270 elector vote minimum. At the same time, we still have the question pending of what goes on in the Senate. There was a big fight for the Senate. A lot of the polls, which have been proven wrong, projected that there might well be a swing to the Democrats in majority in the Senate. As it turns out, that's not where we are. We basically came up with 48-48 with two Senate seats likely to go Republican, which would make it 50-48. Two remaining are both in the state of Georgia. Both are headed for a runoff in early January. We won't know until late January how they come out. In order for the Democrats to prevail, they would have to win both of those seats as a practical matter and win the presidency, because if it is a 50-50 tie in the Senate, what happens is the vice president gets to vote, and we have a Vice President Kamala Harris who would vote with the Democrats. You can't get a thinner margin than that, without a doubt. I mean, the polls really have been, I believe at least, slightly misleading this time. It looked like there was going to be a fairly significant margin for the Democrats. And in fact, when the electoral votes are all counted, it may be a substantial margin, as it was for Donald Trump in 2016. But I think it's fair to say that the nation as a whole did not swing emphatically over to the blue side of the ledger. They sort of came right down the middle and said, we'd like divided government. We don't want to go too far into things like wealth tax, into Medicare for all, some of the things that had been talked about. So as a practical matter, it looks like where we're headed in the new year for the next 4 years is a more moderate, centrist government, because both sides are going to have something to say about it. We now go to the gentleman I just was referring to, our chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Cirilli, who's been doing such great reporting throughout on this. So, Kevin, bring us up to date on what you know.
Well, just outside of Washington, D.C., there's been crowds erupting in celebratory notion. But the Trump campaign is vowing to fight this. They say in a statement that they will be making their legal case starting on Monday. But Joe Biden reaching the more than 270 votes that he needs in order to get to the threshold.
So, Kevin, I want to interrupt just for one moment. Just a few minutes ago, as I reported, President Trump came out with a statement saying that Vice President Biden was falsely claiming that he'd be victor. Now we have a statement from, as he identifies himself, President-elect Biden, Joe Biden, saying, I am honored and humbled by the trust the American people have placed in me and in Vice President-elect Harris. So there you have it on the written statement now. We have Vice President Biden now saying he is President-elect. He is honored and humbled by being elected the 46th President of the United States. At the same time, we have a conflicting statement, of course, from President Trump saying it's a false claim, that there's a lot left to go here. So Kevin, this is not over in that sense. We don't have a concession or close to it.
But in terms, a
Kevin?
concession is not required. A concession is not required in order to become president. And so I think that what you're going to be seeing is the continued, from the Biden campaign's perspective, the transition to begin.